Yes, it is my first time to come to Boa Forum, but I've heard a lot about this forum as a very professional forum where good discussions happen.
Okay, so when you came here, what impressed you most during the past 2 days?
I think there are two things which are very striking. One is the agenda, which is really in sync with some of the burning issues facing the global economy and some of the emerging challenges that the global economy faces. And second is the quality of speakers are very good.
Okay, we know that you have just gave a speech in the morning forum which focused about the Belt and Road Initiative. And we also know that you are very professional about this initiative. So can you give us some feelings for the situations, for the modern situation and the cooperation between the other countries and about China in this initiative?
I think Belt and Road Initiative is a game-changer initiative. It's of course a global initiative, and it has required a lot of upfront investment in the design of it and also in trying to carry along the various stakeholders and countries. It's come at a time when there have been a lot of concerns about the globalization. There has been a lot of backlash on globalization since the 2008 crisis, and people are very skeptical about different types of international initiatives. However, the Belt and Road Initiative has to be seen in context of an opportunity to strengthen what I would call global economic globalization, and it has raised an awareness that there are alternative approaches to globalization. It is pushing for inclusive globalization and sustainability across the board. There is also a recognition that with the Belt and Road Initiative, we have been able to stimulate economic growth, which had slowed down as a result of the previous crisis, and it is helping to promote trade. It's trying to lift the landlocked countries from being landlocked to land-linked. It's helping the developing countries to address their infrastructure challenges and shortages. There has been quite substantive implementation of Belt and Road Initiative at country level for the last 5 years. It's taken off more in the last couple of years in terms of the pace and sequencing. Every country has a different complexion of the Belt and Road Initiative, because the Belt and Road Initiative has been designed in accordance with the country strategies, the visions of specific countries, what their issues and challenges are and what their priorities are. But what's interesting is, in addition to the country-specific Belt and Road initiatives, there are also efforts underway to work with very solid regional economic cooperation blocks, such as the ASEAN or Euro-Asian in the Central Asian republics promoted by Russia. And hopefully this effort that BRI is trying to promote to link its overall strategic direction to reinforce the regional economic cooperation and integration will have pretty high dividends going forward, because one, regional economic integration process has been pretty strongly underway in Asia region particularly. So to reinforce that will not only help strategize Belt and Road Initiative in an effective manner, but it will also give an impetus to the regional economic cooperation and integration. The final point I'd like to make is that of course there have always been a lot of initiatives worldwide. 2-3 things stand out about Belt and Road Initiative. One is that this initiative is about infrastructure connectivity predominantly, but it has few elements which reinforce and propel this. One is an enabling policy, so you have to develop policy synergies to carry this forward. And these policy synergies have to be in sync with multilateral rules-based approaches going forward. Second is trade. Infrastructure connectivity is, lack of infrastructure connectivity has been a major impediment to the trade of the developing countries, because the tariff and non-tariff barriers are very high, particularly in the South Asia and Central Asian republics region. So addressing those tariff barriers and non-tariff barriers will be critical in order to take full advantage of a smooth, seamless infrastructure that is being promoted by Belt and Road Initiative. There's already evidence that Belt and Road Initiative is resulting in increase in trade, and the increase in trade is much more if some of the border impediments have been removed. The third element is financial cooperation. This is an area where a lot of work still needs to be done. Of course, the infrastructure finance has been made available through Silk Road Fund, where which has invested about $11–12 billion. There's of course China Development Bank that has been a major, that has committed a lot of capital. There are multilateral development banks, but there's need for more participation from the MDBs. But most of all, this needs to be financed by long-term capital. There's a lot of saving within even Asia region and its long-term savings that needs to be deployed in financing this infrastructure. And then the 2030 agenda. It's important that BRI catalyzes the 2030 agenda.
Yes, thank you so much for such high praise for the Belt and Road Initiative. And we also know that by now there are more than 113 countries have joined in this initiative, and just now Italy have been new member for the initiative. And how to evaluate this trend that more and more countries are joining into this initiative?
I guess one could stand on the side and watch, or one can participate in this exciting venture. Of course, for the developing countries, there are immediate direct benefits, because if they are signatory to the Belt and Road Initiative, and if they sit down and develop a program of action, whether it's got to do with developing energy sector, power sector generation, or it's got to do with development of roads or railway networks or the ports, it's all win-win for the developing countries. Now, when it comes to the developed countries, particularly countries like Europe or others, there are two elements that they need to consider in their participation. One is, of course, linking with the port in Italy will help very fast track movement of goods. And we have found that if you take, if you pursue port development and the right location of the port, then the time to move the goods reduces, the shipping time reduces substantively, and the trade cost automatically come down, and exports or imports increase faster. So one of the special features of Belt and Road Initiative over the time that has been promoted is to look at opportunities to develop maritime belt as much as possible. And by maritime belt, it requires development of the port infrastructure as well as so you have developed countries whose ports are need to be developed, and logistic services need to be improved. So one is what BRI can do to the developed world, but second is what advantages it brings, which is their private sector can participate in the investment opportunities. Of course, they will be taking risks, but they will also be benefiting from the return it offers. It will rejuvenate their industry because it will end up being a supplier of the machinery and equipment. So ultimately, it's all about everybody looking at how they can take advantage of the Belt and Road Initiative given their own location, but more so given their commercial interests. So sooner or later, more countries will consider, but already we understand that in the recent trip to Europe, President Xi has had a very good discussion on the subject matter, and I think it has been tied up very nicely to the whole question of global governance and the need to push for multilateralism and to push for how Belt and Road Initiative can help accelerate the implementation of the Sustainable Development Goals, which is all about reducing the poverty, reducing inequalities, helping to meet the developmental goals which have got to do with reducing the infrastructure impediments, and so on and so forth. So BRI offers this opportunity to selectively fast track some of these 2030 development, sustainable development goals. And also, as you are developing infrastructure, one has to be moving towards green infrastructure, and that's also very attractive to Europe, which has been promoting green infrastructure and green finance.